Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Why don't we start with Councilman Smith, if you want to go around, introduce yourself, share your association.
Jeff Smith, representative from City Council.
Deb Geyer, Kellyanne.
Jason Bradley, I own the Culver's Restaurant and Scoreboard Future Bradley's next door.
Austin Iverson, the Corn Palace Inn.
Tim Smith, and I'm on the Sports Authority and Team Makers, Wesleyan, and so on, baseball board, among others.
And the list goes on.
Connie Ward from the My Place Hotel.
I'm Stephanie Elwine, City Administrator. I'm just staff.
Unimportant.
Yep. Aaron Heeb, Administrative Coordinator, City Staff as well. Okay, second on the agenda here, approval of minutes. You just wanted, they should be included with your packet if you just want to review those quickly. And then we'll start with a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Jason, second by Tim. For all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, motion passed. And then financial report. So I did include the SCA financials, but also a breakdown of the bid for the revenue and expense. I'll have Stephanie go through this for the board.
So just to give everyone a picture of where we stand now, if you look at the sheet that says revenue and expense report, on the first page you'll see that the total revenue received year to date is $117,950.50. And then the current expenses are $51,450. And you'll see revenue, we have $66,500 of revenue above expenses. When you see the line that says other sources, I just wanted to clarify that. That's the money that was left over from the old bid before we started the new bid with the new bid fund. So we transferred that, what used to be in general fund, into the new bid 4 fund. So that's the leftover money from the old bid when we were still doing $1.50. Couple things to point out. Within this, you still do have, off that $169,777.50 that shows revenue that's available, you already have $48,550 that you've authorized the Sports and Events Authority to spend throughout 2024, which brings you down to $121,227.50. Then you also have to take off $32,000 that SEA had already authorized for Special Olympics. That was part of the money that was transferred over from general fund. So your actual available balance is $89,227.50 as of right now. Now, of course, there's going to be more revenue that continues to come in throughout the rest of the year, but that's where you stand as of right now. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Do we need to address for the new people how the Sports Authority
Sure,
works?
I can go over that if you'd like. So right now, when the new bid was established, it's a $2 per night fee for each room. From there, this bid board determined what they want the Sports and Events Authority to have for a budget in 2024. To start with, the bid 4 board approved a $100,000 budget for 2024 that put them close to what they had done in previous years, just looking back at previous history. If there's an interest in a one-time event or something comes up that's unanticipated, the SEA always has the ability to come back to the bid 4 board and ask for additional funding or additional budget authority. Or the bid 4 board also has the ability to make allocations for something else that they're requested to do. I can't remember if we have this on the agenda next, but I'll just state this because we're going to get into that soon. Part of the agenda today is we're asking you to consider what you want to recommend for your 2025 budget, because the city's just starting that process. So we can go into more detail at that time if you'd like, but that's kind of the general overview. So at the new $2 per night per room fee, year-to-date, you have collected, sorry, I'm looking back, $117,950.
So is the only people that this bid board gives money to the Sports Authority?
No, the bid board has the ability to recommend a budget for whatever the project might be. So it's just part of the budget was to fund the Sports and Events Authority, and then they give money out to different events that are coming to town. That's what this list was really intended to show everybody. I think you have it on your table, but it shows all of the grant awards that have been granted for 2024.
And do they make do they come to you and give you what they're going to spend that $100,000 on?
And I'll let Tim speak since he's
Yeah.
on that board. Or, Jeff, you're not on it anymore. Jeff used to be for years, so.
Basically, the $100,000 was based on what we've spent in past years. Actually, it's a little more than we spent in past years. But we meet monthly, and organizations that are bringing events into town that will put people in motel beds are considered for monetary awards. Give you an example. State women's softball tournaments. We went a couple of years and Mitchell hosted nothing, and we couldn't figure out why. So we brought the president of the local association in and said, how come we got nice 8 fields out here, how come we're not getting them? She said, well, there's no incentive for me, I can't make any money. We'll work and can't make any money. By the time they pay the rent on the fields, pay the lights, they cannot charge, according to the state, they cannot charge an admission fee to the games. They basically can get concessions or maybe sell T-shirts, but that basically offsets. So what is the incentive for them to bring 50 softball teams into town when they can't make $1? So they come here, they ask for funding, and we negotiate a little bit and say, hey, for $2,000, $3,000, would you consider? Come to an agreement. That's where our money goes for things like that. And obviously, if you bring 40, 50 softball teams in with 12 people on a team for a Friday, Saturday, I mean, that's what we're all about. And it's getting more and more and more for events from across the state that they're requiring money up front. The big projects you see on the one here for the Special Olympics that are out for 25, 26, and 27, those had to be bid for years to come. And basically, we're bidding against Sioux Falls, Aberdeen, Pierre, Rapid City. We like the basketball because that's a big one. Comes here in March when we can use the business. But also they want us to do the fall softball, those tournaments as well. So you can see next year we've got the basketball in March coming, but we've already earmarked 12,000, and we had to do that in order to beat out Aberdeen and Pierre and so on to get those bids.
So each event actually submits an application to the SCA. Those are all listed on the city's website, and each individual application, they'll state what they're using those funds for. And then after the event, they submit a report on like how many hotel rooms, that kind of thing. The SCA board, when they're considering what they're going to do for grants, they look at a matrix that includes the time of year that gives extra incentive for those times when we're slower in hotels, and then like number of room night stays and number of people coming when they determine what the award amount is.
Yep, so we have criteria, like Stephanie stated, this funding matrix, again, the month that the event is coming to town, how many estimated hotel rooms they could provide our community, and then obviously the evaluation form at the end to give us more exacts about the event.
So if they have an event, and I don't even know that I've seen anything on here that I would say is an event, but if somebody was having something that really wasn't going to bring any out-of-town people to put heads in beds, do they not necessarily get what they ask for?
Yeah, that's right.
There's like a
Yep.
matrix and,
Yep.
okay. All right.
And even some of the ones that have been well established, and now the event is generating more money, the committee keeps cutting back how much they're awarding so that they kind of slowly weaned off. But if it's a new event that this is the first time, they might give them more funding in that first year to kind of get things going, too. At least from what I've observed. I'm not on the board. Any other questions about the financials that I can answer? If not, they'll need a motion to approve.
So if there's no further questions, we'll take a motion for approval of the financial report.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Austin, second by Tim. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay. Okay, motion passed. Citizens input. If you need to address the board on an item that was not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium, state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be considered, but no action will be taken at this time.
Aaron, can I just ask you a couple questions?
And then, of course, state your name, because
Yeah,
nobody knows who
absolutely.
you
Nobody
are,
knows.
right?
Nobody, well, some of the new people might not. Hi, I'm Jerry Thompson. I own the Hampton Inn and part of the Comfort Inn with Dave and his group. Just have a couple of questions. I'm glad that we got notice that we could come attend, because this is the first meeting I've been able to go to since the new bid was approved by council. One of the concerns, obviously, that I had at the time, and I see you've addressed that with some additional members, is the amount of representation by the motel owners. In my opinion, and I know we don't want to get too big of a bulky board going, I mean, it'd get pretty complicated, but since the funds come from the motels, from the business district and the tax on the motels, to me, it's really, really critical that we continue to have a lot of input from motel owners to make sure that that money is going the right direction, because according to the terms of the bid, if the motel owners don't feel these funds are being spent to help grow beds, it can go away, and nobody wants it to go away. Don't get me wrong. I don't want that. I mean, there's not a reason in the world we wouldn't want to promote our businesses, bring people to town to spend money at not only in motels, but the restaurants and at the stores and so forth. So you've addressed part of that ownership, or part of that representation issue that I had the last go around, that the previous mayor and I got a little sideways on, and that's all history. It's behind us. But I would like to ask the board to consider, and I know that Jill Larson does sit on the Sports Authority, I believe, but I don't know if there's a clear understanding as to if the Sports Authority is more sports-oriented, or if it's really more events-oriented, or what it is. But I really feel like Jill could be probably a pretty good member of this board also, because she literally talks to people on a daily basis on these conferences and events, business conferences, things that don't typically go through the Sports Authority, whether they're business meetings or whatever, where people are coming for a 2-3 day deal. We see the same thing that the Sports Authority sees when you're trying to get large tournaments to come to town. A lot of these business events, unless you're willing to incentivize them in some fashion, whether it's a reduced rate or some free rooms for the administration for that committee or that group, same deal. It's competitive. It's very competitive, and they're always looking for, some dollars to help incentivize them to come. So I guess I'd like to see if the committee, and this doesn't have to be done today, I get it, Aaron, but I think that I'd like to recommend that maybe we get a little more representation from Jill and the input that she sees on a daily basis. Because when we do have a state conference that comes to town, used to be it'd go through the Convention Visitors Bureau, but anymore it's coming direct to the conference center, which is city-owned. And we take most of those calls.
Okay, your time's up.
3 minutes, sorry.
Okay.
I guess just one thing to follow up. If there's to be a change for another voting member, that would go to city council, because that would be an ordinance change. But I do think anyone who wants to come to the meeting and provide, input on items scheduled on the agenda, that's great. It'll add to it. And I would hope Jill brings those things to the Sports and Events Authority, because it's not just sports. It's supposed to be sports and events. Anything that generates overnight stays, I sure hope she's bringing those to SEA as well.
Yeah, and we have done something like the VFW was recently here, the firefighter school that was here. I mean, we've given money to some of those. I got a question, Aaron. How do you let all the motel owners know of our meetings or not, or just our committee, or is it?
So the specific, I guess, bid for board emails go to the board. I know the agenda and agenda packet was published last Friday, I guess, as far as the public notification process. But I will, I guess, put together kind of a list, an email, and just inform the rest of the hotels that are included in the bid district, let them know when, because again, we don't meet, we meet 3-4 times a year.
Right, right.
So yes, I will put together an email and
Right.
include that with the rest of the representatives.
Where's the notification, Aaron? Is it, is it in the paper, or where does it come from?
So on the City of Mitchell website,
If you click on agendas and minutes on the home page,
yep, so this would be your homepage. And then,
you can subscribe also by just going to that website, and then you have to create an account. You choose which boards you want to be notified on, and then anytime the agendas or minutes are published, it will send you either a text message or an email that that's been done.
yep, so you would,
And so you could do that for SEA too, if you'd like to see both of them. Then you can see the packets when they're published, which has all the applications and everything on it too.
yep, so Jerry, this sign-in button here, you would click this, you'd create your account. I don't know how detailed we want to get, I guess I could.
I can figure it out later.
And then it will,
I didn't know that was even available. I didn't know where.
once you're signed in, there'll be a subscriptions button. Once you're successfully signed in, subscription button right here, you'll click that, and then that'll list all the City of Mitchell boards.
You could
And then
subscribe to all of ours if you'd like to.
And I don't, like I said, I don't care if I'm on, it's not that I want to be me specifically on the board. I just want as many motel owners involved in the process so it can keep going, because I know it'll happen. I mean, people are gonna, if something they don't like starts, they start talking and I mean, they didn't tell me about it, or I didn't know about it, and inevitably, they chose not to be involved. I get that. But I think the more communication you can encourage, the better chance of this being a positive thing rather than turning ugly.
I've got a question. From the last meeting, I remember us stating that we were going to open it up for more board members. Now, excuse me, because this has been 6 full months. I looked at it and said, oh yeah, that's been 6 full months, so I don't quite remember. But I see in the notes here, 5 hoteliers, 2 business people, 1 city council member, and 1 mayor. And of course, we've got 2 new representations here, so is that part of it, or what happened kind of behind the
The
scenes?
city council added 2 additional hotel owners once the original request was received.
Okay, so
So the current bid, as it is, includes 2 additional hotels from we have 9 people on the board. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here, so we're missing 2.
It's much better, Austin, I agree, but I didn't know anybody was adding 2 more members. And I'm the one that sat in front of city council and asked for more representation and was told it would happen.
What-
I had
What
no
is,
idea
what was
when
the
or who or
process
why or-
that we went under after approving that?
So it was an ordinance approved by city council, so there would have been a first and second reading, and then the council would have formally appointed the 2 new members as part of a city council meeting as well.
The search process.
Oh, that I don't
How does that normally work?
That was all
I'm reading
done.
between the lines, I mean, Jerry, were you guys asked, is that kind of what I'm getting at? Because I know last time when we were up here 6 months ago, we addressed that, so I don't know what happens behind the scenes.
That I can't speak to.
We were not notified nor asked. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, that was, my understanding is that was all handled by the former mayor.
And I think we got blacklisted because we were naughty.
So are there 5 hotels?
Yes.
Yep, so we have My Place representation, Quality Inn, Corn Palace Inn, Kelly Inn, and then Thunderbird, who's not in attendance right now, or for this meeting.
I do know one of the comments I remember being made at the city council meeting when the two new members were appointed, at least at the time, I believe the mayor said he was excited to get the new hotel that came to town involved with the groups to see what was going on with the bid. So I know that was one of the discussions that I remember.
Yeah, and by no means am I closing it off, trying to say, well, we didn't want these two
Yeah.
members. I mean, this is fantastic, and thank you so much for the continued investment that Kelly Inn has brought over the last 15 years, plus my place, brand new. That's fantastic to see your city grow.
And I would repeat that comment. I'm not disappointed at all with the representation of who they are. It's not about it needed to be me or Dave or anybody else. I just wanted more motel people on the board. In fact, that was.
It
what
should be all
created-
hotel people.
Well, that's what created the argument to begin with.
It's
There
the
was-
hotel people that are collecting the tax. It should be all hotel people and then maybe one outside member.
A little history. when-
Yes, and I'm on the Watertown bid board, and it is all hoteliers, and then we have a separate person.
Most of them are that way. That's why when the first reading came out, it was actually only, well, 2, and Austin would have made 3, but, you know, it was more business people and council people and just a couple of motel owners. And that's when we raised the flag and said, wait a second, it's a motel tax. There needs to be more. At least my comment was the majority needs to be motel, if not all. And I got severe pushback from the mayor at that time. That's what started the whole argument. So, but it is getting better, you know, it's going the right direction. And I think if we could get more people to sit in the audience, like you said, Aaron, I don't have to be on board. I don't care that I don't have a vote. I just want to be involved in the process and make sure the monies are being spent as intended. I don't know, and I'm not worried about the last mayor, and I don't know who the mayor is going to be 10 years from now, but I've been around here long enough to know that if there's a pool of funds available, some mayors are going to go after it for whatever. You know, I mean, it could have been diverted into the general fund. Who knows?
It's
So
just-
that's all we were trying to protect.
Yeah, just to clarify, it does have to be used, the money can only be used for the purposes allowed under the statute. It can't just be used for general fund.
And what are the, is it for marketing? Can you use it for bricks and mortar? Is it,
Yeah, there's a number of different uses that are authorized by the statute, and, I mean, we can pull the statute up later if you want, but
it's on the website?
it's a state statute, so we can pull it right off of the state's website.
So an easy way to get to the bids, we did create like a short link. If you just go to cityofmitchellsd.gov/bid, it'll take you to all the bid districts, and then you can click on bid district 4, and it will have all the organization ordinances. It'll have references there for you as well. The agendas and minutes will be linked on there, I believe. Yeah, there's the resolutions and the ordinance creating it.
Do you want to pull this up?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then that's just a quick way to get to the agendas and minutes if you don't want to see all the other city minutes. If you're not like me, read everything, so.
Anybody else that would like to address the board?
Aaron, I was going to mention one thing, if that's okay, and I don't know if this is the spot or not, but I was looking at the Sports and Events Authority where they've funded for this particular year already. And Tim, one of the things that has actually just kind of bothered me over the years is soccer. And so I'd like to have you go back to the Sports and Events Authority and maybe try to understand. We've got one of the most beautiful state-of-the-art soccer complexes in South Dakota, and we get no action whatsoever. Now, we've got swim team here today because they have to pay for facilities, and they have to raise money. And I'm sure that's why they're asking possibly, we'll see what their presentation is. But in reality, we had the city of T come and rent our facility, and I think got awarded at Sports and Events Authority, I believe. But that was the T Association and not the Mitchell Association. And we actually, when we first got involved in this, and Jerry was well involved in this too, and probably Dave and everybody else in the room, that's my age. But we put in 10 fields, and very rarely do we ever use 10 fields. So the 10th field became our rodeo grounds. And I'm afraid that if we're not going to utilize the 9 fields going forward, that it could possibly turn into something else. So I really feel, and I'm not pointing fingers to you, Tim, at all.
No,
But I
no,
think we
I-
need to investigate, and Aaron, we need to investigate the reason why the Mitchell Soccer Association is not utilizing our complex.
And I can give you a little bit of an answer, because we've discussed the same thing. But the local soccer association has gone under a lot of changes and really had no strong leadership. The other part of it is that when the High School Activities Association changed their rules, they wanted to play on turf. So all of a sudden, the high school shifted everything to Joke Middle Field where they could play on turf. We had all intentions, like you said, when those got built, to have all kinds of tournaments out there, including a state tournament. We can't do that anymore. Dakota Wesleyan has kind of run with it, and Aaron maybe can speak, but Dakota Wesleyan is planning a tournament for this coming summer, kind of a special event where they're going to bring in coaches, almost an evaluation thing where players will come in from across the state, play, and there'll be 25, 30, 35 coaches, GPAC Conference, North Central Conference, watching, kind of like the AAU basketball does at the Pentagon or around the area. They've kind of taken the ball and run with that. And then Harv's Sport Shop just sponsored one here earlier this spring, a soccer tournament out there as well. So we're trying to get into it, but the local association has just kind of been disorganized. But I mean, we've encouraged swimming. Can you bring in more events? We ask everybody that comes in, hockey, can you squeeze another tournament in? What we're up against most of the time is we have our 1 or 2 tournaments, whether it be hockey, whether it be swimming, whatever, but every other city in South Dakota has their weekend, and there's not a lot open without stepping on somebody else's toes, to get more tournaments here. But I mean, we encourage everybody that comes in to try and add.
And just to I guess, provide a little update on that. So DW Soccer, they hosted a skills camp the 17th through the 19th out at the complex. They utilize 3 fields. But again, being its first year, I counted Wednesday, they had 53 participants out there, mainly U12. Is that the right terminology for soccer, I think? U12. Friday got rained out, I think. That was when that big rain came through. Also with the Mitchell Soccer Association, I think they got, eyes opened a little bit when the T Association hosted the event. So they actually came to Sports and Events Authority here in July, presented an application for September 6th through the 8th. Team-wise, they were unsure. So we tabled that until this August meeting because their registration closes, I think, August 18th, and we just tabled it to get a more specific team count. So yeah, we'll work on it and continue to work with them. And Scott Mullenmeister has reached out to me a few times. Allison Palmer was here presenting, and like Tim said, the board has just had some adjustments, and the drive leadership has changed. So hopefully with them, we'll be able to work and get a couple tournaments each year.
Thank you.
Any others that want to address the board? Okay, we'll move to presentation and requests by Dakota Riptide. If Jason and Rob want to come up here to the podium, please. Thank you.
I'm Rob Shelsky. This is Jason Weedy. We're on the board for Dakota Riptide. If you notice in the meeting minutes, we were here back in January. And so some of you probably heard our spiel or presentation. We'll give it to you real quick one more time. If you remember back in August of 22, the paper didn't do us great, but was good advertisement when they put out there. They said the headline was "No coach, no pool, no money." And so at that time, again, our coach had left, the pool was shut down, and we were in a tough spot. And so, you know, through that year, we missed out on a meet in December of '22. We finally got back in the water of April of '23. We hired a new coach, May. We had a tremendous summer swim season last year where we were back up to that 70, 80 swimmers. Same thing through the winter months. We've kind of turned the corner of where we're going for our swim club, and we're doing really good things, and we're headed in the right direction. But if you remember when the pool was built, Dakota Riptide, it might have been MAC at the time. So we did, it was Mitchell Aquatic Club. We since joined with Huron, so we became Dakota Riptide. We pledged to give $1 million to the build. We were able to raise a little over $800,000 that we've paid to it. I think if you read in the minutes, it was like we still owe $185,000.
Came down.
And it's down because some good things that way, working with the city. So I think is it 170, maybe 165?
168, 886.
So we're down to owing $168,000. What we've talked about and kind of walked ourselves through is we typically or historically only had a winter meet in December, and then we'd run through and every once in a while have a state meet. When we were here in January, we said we're committed to bumping that up to 2 meets in the winter. We're on the schedule for an early December meet and a mid-January meet. We've looked through where state meets are, and in looking at it, I think we will have a state meet in 26, 27, and 28. Yep. So for the next 3 years after this next winter, we'll have a state meet. I always go back to, it's been a while, in March of '22, there was a bunch of stuff going on in Mitchell where it was, I think, the boys were trying to make it at Sodak 16, playing against Rapid City Stevens. We had swim in town, and that 13 and over swim meet is a 4-day meet. It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, and then also on Sunday. But Rapid City Stevens had to spend the night in Chamberlain because the hotels were full that weekend because of everything that was going on. And so, you know, so that's kind of where we're at. We're looking at, we're in the rotation, I think.
Yeah.
Jason?
So the nice thing with, the good thing for Mitchell is that there's only 4 pools that can host the 13 and over indoor meet for South Dakota based on their bylaws. You have to have a second area pool for warm up and cool down. So Mitchell has that. Sioux Falls has it because in the wintertime we do 25 yards instead of 50 meters. So they have a 50-meter indoor pool that they cut in half, so then they have a separate pool for warm-up, cool down, because you're only swimming on half of that. So it's us two, Pier, and now Vermilion. Vermilion's, USD is building a brand-new 50-meter indoor pool, so they will have the ability to host it as well. Bad thing from Vermilion is when we bring in this many swimmers, their hotel space is a little limited compared to what Mitchell has, so. But the other areas can do the 12 and under because they don't require the warm-up, cool down because it's all about the timeline on how often that swimmer gets into the pool for the next event. So with the older kids, they give them the ability to have a warm-up, cool down pool. So there's only 4 of us that can host it. So we will always be in either in the rotation quicker or have the ability to bid for so Rapid City hosts the 12 and under this year. No.
This coming year.
Yeah.
Next year.
So, yeah, next year. So when they come to host the 13 and over, that'll be up for bid then for the areas that have the ability to host it with the warm-up, cool-down pool. So there's a potential there. We would have that one. We'd put in for the bid for it. And if we didn't get it, we would host. So we have 3 championship meets for swim. There's like a B meet, they call it, which is like your last chance to get in. You either make a qualifying time or you get first or second. And then in the indoor season, it's either your 12 and under meet one weekend or a 13 and older the second weekend. So once we get in that rotation of 3, we have it for 3 years in a row.
And swimmers, our December meet this year, we had 282 swimmers for our Friday, Saturday, Sunday meet. Again, we're proposing to do a 3-day meet in December, a 2-day meet in January. The state meets bring in roughly 300 swimmers, and again, that 13 and over is a 4-day meet. So you've got people here Thursday night swimming all the way through the weekend. And again, we expect our December meet to be roughly 300, and our January meet to be in the same capacity. So,
Yeah, our December meet is usually always really good. We get a lot of, the year we didn't have it, when the pool was being fixed, we got a lot of feedback on, oh, I wish there was that meet in Mitchell. We like coming there so much. I mean, we're about 2 hours from anybody that's coming on the eastern side of the state. So a lot of people do come to our meet. There's plenty of places for them to eat and stay, so they never have any issues there. So we do always have a pretty good turnout for our meets. We're hitting around that 300 swimmer mark, so.
And I think, and you can read in the meeting minutes, we do owe the city some additional funds. We're looking for help to repay that. I think it said we were looking for a 3-year commitment of $50,000 a year is what we'd ask for. We'll open it up for any questions that anybody may have.
Yeah, and we do recognize that the bid did help pay for the pool. Right away, because there was that, I think it was $1 tax that went on to the rooms for 3 years or 4 years to help pay for the pool. So we do appreciate that, and wouldn't be where we're at right now if we didn't have that. We just had different things happen with the club where we've, COVID, when we were still collecting donations because we did raise quite a bit of money. And then COVID kind of hit that year, and we had a lot of people kind of step back from their donations or their pledges that they had given. And part of the reason where we fell short was there. So, like I said, we do appreciate the initial part that helped get the pool built. We're looking for the money to help kind of keep us running. I mean, we've done some things to be in a better financial situation. I don't know if you've been in the pool lately, but there are some advertising signs in there, which helps us, pay for the coach, pay to rent the lanes. That's one other thing too, that in addition to the $800,000, we've also paid since up through 2023, we've also paid in rent $140,000 to the city. So I mean, we've makes it kind of tight for a club with rent and different things. But like I said, we've done things since we've been on the board the last about a year now, probably. Where we've got some signage, we're getting some advertising in there, and that helps us cover those expenses. So, if we do see our club go down a little bit in numbers, we've got some extra funds there. But we've grown quite a bit. Like when we were driving to Huron when our pool was down, we had 13 kids that were carpooling and going up there. Now we're up to over 70, around that 70 mark. So, we've got it back to where it was kind of before the pool went down for that year. But we've got the right person in place as a coach. We run some swimming lessons through there, which is kind of a feeder program, and I think we got 15 kids from it for this summer. Some of them are little kids, might be a little intimidating when you swim in the summertime for the first time, when you look out that outdoor pool and how long it is. So I suspect we get maybe more when they see the indoor pool, and I feel like I can make it to that end of the pool rather than the 50 yards. So our meters.
Are you guys still at the $50,000 a year with your request? Is that kind of where you're at, or
That's where we'd start. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we appreciate anything.
for the next 3 years?
Yeah.
3 years, yep. Yeah, because we have to pay it back to the city. We have 4 years.
Yep.
I'll be the devil's advocate because I'm new.
Okay.
I think you just told me that the bid board monies do not pay for bricks and mortar.
They can.
Do you pay for bricks and mortar?
It's one of the allowable expenses. This being a newer facility, and actually, if you go back in the history, the previous bid board, one of the things that money was going directly towards was the pool, and before that was the second sheet of ice, so.
The motel's committed to $1 million for the original pool.
So the hotels have already paid $1 million.
Right, but that doesn't, that to me doesn't eliminate the possibility.
Yeah.
You just so you're aware of it.
Yep.
And bid funds also paid for, it's a different bid, but bid funds also paid for the convention center as well.
If the pool had not gone down, would you be on schedule to make your payment?
Well, I will say, during the time that the pool was down, the city didn't
We didn't charge
charge them rent. We
Nope.
just put it towards debt service. And then, as you probably are aware, there was a settlement agreement between the city and the contractor, and we included their loss of revenue from that meet, and we got reimbursed for that, and it went towards their debt service. That's why the debt service went down from 185 to 168.
I believe there would be some fundraising, or there'd be an ask in trying to figure out where that dollar amount was. Again, we weren't, there's always turnover and change. We weren't part of the board that handled this previously. We came on the board, after the pool had shut down, different things. There would still be some fundraising that would have had to been done, or we would have been short of the million, but not by the same dollar amount.
I ask because I know you've gone to other organizations, gotten help from other places.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one, discussion and action to recommend additional funding to the Sports and Events Authority for year 2024.
So I don't believe the Sports and Events Authority has made an official request, but at the last bid board meeting, when you guys were trying to determine what dollar amount that budget should be for 2024, you wanted to have the ability to come back and revisit that budget number to see if you're still okay with that.
But maybe you can kind of remind us, Stephanie, of the total, now that we're up finally to the $2. We were $1.50, and then Sports and Events Authority was always 50 cents. So can you kind of just maybe give us some general idea of what the gross, approximately? We know it's not going to be exact, but it'll be close.
Well, I can tell you that up there on the spreadsheet that Aaron has pulled up from 2013 to 2024, that was 50 cents. So take that times 4 or 2.
So I think with the 50-cent increase, it was expected another 80,000. If we added up, I think it was right around 320,000 that total collections would have.
Yeah, actually, this is probably a better look because your total for 2023 is 235, and that was at $1.50. But the chart up above shows how much SEA has been given in previous years at just 50 cents of the bid. You go back up to the top, Aaron. And that's how the board originally came to the $100,000 mark. So you may not want to add to it. You might want to only consider if they have a special request come in, but we told you that we would put it on the agenda for discussion at the next meeting.
So just basically as a range, we could say between $300,000 and $320,000 approximately. Just to get an idea of what kind of gross amount that we're dealing with.
And if I'm from the Sports and Events Authority part, you can see the only year we spent over 100,000 was 2023. And you guys have budgeted us 100,000 for this year, which I think will be adequate. From where we are now, we have 48,000 remaining. And if something special would come up, we can always come back to this group and ask you to bump it up for a special event.
I think the real question would be, what are we consistently missing because we're getting asked because we don't give enough because it's not in the budget? And you can start from huge things that we would never expect to host again. Maybe that's the largest basketball tournament because there are players at 50 grand. Can you enlighten us?
Aaron can probably do a better job than that. I don't know of a lot of things we have had to turn away. I know there was a convention, there was a basketball that was presented to us for the opening weekend of pheasant hunting season. No rooms available.
And then there was an EMS conference, a bigger one statewide. That would be over that same hunting season timeframe. That just feedback from some of the hotels was just there won't be rooms available. I think they were requesting for the bid to include over that second weekend of pheasant season. And that would be I guess.
Well, there's got to be some sort of a statistic with the people that ask and that we end up giving a proposal that we typically get 50% of these or 60%. Do you know what that is? We would guess that we'd be missing out on the other ones because of lack of our ability to give.
Well, I think like what Aaron said, though, I don't know of any that have been presented to SEA that were turned down, other than because it was a bad time, so we didn't go after the bid because the hotel said they were already full. You know, there was, I remember at DWU, we had to make a pledge for a big, can't remember what the tournament was, but we didn't end up getting it at the time.
So
That's
it
the only one
doesn't
I'm
seem like
aware
we're
of.
limited by budget, we're limited
We're
by
not.
asks,
Yeah.
because people just don't come
Well,
and ask.
Well, ask.
That and facilities.
Facility space.
Facilities.
And potential hotel room.
You can see
available.
what road I'm going down here is, okay, now we make it 150 grand. What is that gonna do? Just just give the existing people more money, or is it going to open more opportunity? My question.
Can you come to the podium, Mr. Henry?
Or is that?
Oh, that one works, actually.
First word.
There you go.
I like your question, Austin. Jerry Thompson again, everybody knows. But anyway, I think you're in a phase, quite bluntly, where with the increased funding, I don't think the asks have ramped up to the point that they could. And that may sound funny, but I think, you know, I'm sitting here, I listen to Jill every day, that I lost this one because we didn't have this or that, or we couldn't match this. I think we just need to get a different mindset, that there's more money to spend to help do this. And that's what it's for. The bid is to promote the community and bring people to the community. I think we need to turn it around and say, you guys need to go out and, you need to go out and find people that you can bring, and you got $150,000 to work with. If you don't spend it, it's there for next year. But I think you need to ramp it up. I don't think you want to do the same that we've done for the past 10 years. I think you want to tell people, notch it up, go after it.
Well, I think that is a great point, because considering in 14, pretty much the same amount, $83,000.
I mean, even at
And I don't
100,
even know what is our budget. You know, this is going to be a really dumb question, but what does our budget even allow us to apply to it? I mean, I see these numbers here, but can you enlighten?
well, if you're going to bring in 300,000, let's say, and you're using 150,000 for these events, there's still 150,000 that's sitting out there that could grow for brick and mortar or whatever. But it seems to me, I don't know what, you motel owners are going to
Well,
make the vote,
we-
but to me, it's like, this is what we're trying to do, is spend money to get people to come to our community. Let's notch it up, let's
Yeah,
vote.
so we're kind of talking now chicken or the egg, right? So it's, well, yes, of course, we need more facilities to host these events, but also the asks, so we generate more asks. So where we say, hey, look at all of this backup and this supply. Now we need to provide the facility,
And I-
essentially, right?
Can I also make just
ahead.
the bid board would have the ability to say, SEA, we're going to put aside another $50,000 for you to go after new,
stuff.
unique events that we're not currently.
I just don't want people to think they're limited to 100,000, I mean, if they can get it and bring people, that's okay.
I like that idea. I'm just thinking simple
You-
level
you won't
terms, and
see
I'm
people
going,
just-
I don't want to,
Yeah.
I don't want to limit ourselves. I mean, we're all here to generate more revenue for the city as well as use our facilities. I'm saying, I'm all in for a proposal. Somebody else that knows it better says, hey, I think we should designate X amount of dollars for only new, or maybe we make it higher.
I would just say we've had this discussion over and over and over again at the Sports and Events Authority. We're trying to find, I would love to go out and bring the state pool and darts tournament to Mitchell. Be huge. We have nowhere to put it. I mean, there are 10 items that we would love to bring. We used to have the state youth wrestling tournament here. Love to get it back from Rapid City. We don't have the facility. We can't hold it.
And if we're looking at just to include a number, obviously May through November, end of October, motels are, 600 to 800 rooms already expected. So to go out and get an event that would maybe just sell or provide 50 room nights, then the SEA amount would be very minimal, because the criteria, I wouldn't say 100% of the criteria, but we do factor in the amount of hotel rooms that the event's going to provide. So if the event would bring, 200 people to Mitchell in June, we're looking, hotels are already 600 to 700 rooms sold. The event would bring 200 people. It would fill, 50 room nights sold. They would ask for $2,000. We would reference what other events during that time frame we've awarded funding to. And we would only, the committee would obviously decide what that amount would be, but it would be not very much funding to award. We did just recently host in January the Dakota Wati Challenge. That provided over 600 room nights sold for January, and I know the feedback from a lot of the hotels was very appreciative, and grateful for that. So obviously, November through April is kind of that time frame, I guess, me specifically, that I focus on rather than this, May through November, because, the tourists, the guests, the visitors, they already occupy a pretty substantial amount of rooms that we have available.
Or at least that's what we hear at SEA too. I mean, the hotel owners say that and in the committee hearings that I don't need an event at that time because I'm already full.
Can I add something too? Dave Helloyd, I sit on the Sports Authority, and what we're seeing a lot of in the last few years is the associations like, say, hockey, for example, or I think this year even Mitchell Baseball, did not ask for funds from the Sports Authority because they used to have a 2- and 3-day tournament. Now it's turning into a 1-day tournament. So they don't feel like they should ask us for money because they're not putting heads in beds. I know that's one reason why Mitchell Baseball did not ask for funds this year. They did for the state amateur tournament, but not for the other tournaments that they held during the summer. So you're finding that difficulty too, where families are wanting to just go for 1 day and they don't want to do an overnight because it's getting too expensive or whatever the case may be. So there we need to broaden the Sports Authority into events and maybe not just sports.
So you say the Sports Authority is.
Sports and Events Authority.
So the Sports and Events Authority. So if we're not putting heads in beds, what is the mission? Is the mission of this organization to simply get people to our community where they're eating at Culver's and they're eating at Blarney's, but they're not spending the night?
So
Is there a-
technically, the SCA, the Sports and Events Authority, my understanding was to increase heads and beds, overnight stays.
Right, and so that's where you would draw the line, is is it the heads and beds, or is it just bring people to the community? Because if it's just bringing people to the community, I would say, okay, even though they're not spending the night, or the 50 people that's projected to spend the night, maybe it is worth our time to just get people to Mitchell.
But Austin, that would be a whole new direction because we have been told just the opposite in the
Right,
past.
that's what the question is. Is that specifically heads and beds, or is it bringing
That's
people to Mitchell?
been our mission.
Because you got to abide by that. When you're doing something that's a not-for-profit, or you got a board, it's going, hey, what is our mission here? And it
Yep.
doesn't matter really what your opinion is. You always look back on the mission of the group. You got to defend
But
that.
if the mission isn't to get heads in beds, then you don't need the bid tax because you're not going to collect anything. If you're just going to bring them to town to eat lunch, you're not going to have any bid money to give anybody.
So is that what the event portion of the?
No, my understanding was that, at least this is what I was told when I came here, was SEA was not supposed to be for just sports. It was also to go after other events that would bring people to stay overnight. I know when Aaron first started, you reached out to several organizations in the state to see what it would take for us to host like their annual conferences, and many of them, we didn't have enough like breakout meeting rooms.
Facility space, a lot of Cattlemen's, South Dakota Municipal, there's trade shows that go into those that require more space than we're able to provide them.
We have had I can't remember what it was, the State Veterans Conference. Does that sound right? You guys remember that from the board? And they were like a 3-night conference, and they met out at, the James Valley, or
4-H.
Davidson County
4-H.
4-H building. That's probably the largest conference type meeting I remember coming to town that SEA funded.
Yep, the VFW, and we'll have that back in, I believe, 26 and 27. That's Dr. Christensen kind of has spearheaded that and assists with that.
Is that with the Moose or the Mason or something like that too? So.
We did the Grand Masonry. We We had the Grand Masonry back in 2019. I can double check, but I guess just to your point too, Austin, so I guess this is kind of the SEA's, I don't know if you'd say it's a checklist or a grading scale. It just kind of puts into perspective where we're at as far as room nights sold go, to kind of say, hey, how do we compare to past years, year to date? Now, whether or not, again, these aren't all SEA awarded funding events that are providing this room night sold.
But a lot of them are.
But, there's a handful, and there's, a good checkpoint, again, each meeting that we're able to compare and say, all right, we're sitting, like currently, this July meeting, we're, up 2,400 and some, room nights sold compared to last year. Just a small percentage down compared to 2022. And then obviously the last other 5 years, we're well ahead of that mark. So I guess it's kind of, again, it can be, a kind of kick in the butt, or it can be just a checkpoint to say, we're, I guess, meeting standards, and we're ahead of where we were at last year as far as providing hotel room nights sold.
And some of that, again, is beyond our control. We looked at those figures when they came in and said, wow, how come we're up 2,400 rooms over last year? We looked at the trailing months like May. We had the state men's bowling tournament here at the Village Bowl. That's every weekend for 5 weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We can't get that every year. If they come and ask, hey, can we come next year? Yeah, we'd give them, but we can't because it goes from city to city to city. So next May, we won't have that. I mean, we're challenged with some of those items. Aaron mentioned the Dakota Oyate. Okay, we brought that in January, but in order to do that, we've also made some people not happy. Corey Odland at the high school, and at that time, John Hart at Dakota Wesleyan. Right now, at the Corn Palace, Mitchell High or Dakota Wesleyan does not have a weekend to play basketball because we have an outside tournament, the two Hanson Classics, Dakota Oyate, the
Sacred Hoops.
Yeah, Sacred Hoops. So there's not a weekend in January for our local teams to play. They're not happy.
And Hoop City is the weekend before that.
Now, it's bringing people in, putting them in beds, but you've got to weigh what we have for facilities too. You come to a point where is Dakota Wesleyan going to say, hey, maybe we need to play out at our campus, and then the Corn Palace sits empty. I mean, who knows? But you come to a point where you don't have facilities, and I know Aaron's talked to conventions that just can't come here. I hear what you're saying about reaching out and bringing things in. We'd like to get some home run events. What Aaron is saying, people come in and say, we can bring in 100 people, we can bring in maybe 200 people, those we can handle, and we're giving them money. We'd like to bring in the ones that say, we want to fill 400, 500, 600 hotel rooms. But again, May through November, we can't do that. We had that convention, wanted to come in hunting time in October, wanted us to guarantee them 400 rooms. Well, we can't do it.
Comment, there's lots of pieces to this puzzle, and, there's no one size fits all, but another great example is when we talk to state organizations, for instance, that want to come in for a conference. Well, whenever you have a state organization, they want state rates. Well, state rate used to be $79 a night. And that includes summertime, where right now we're getting $200 a night. So the motel owners look at that and go, well, why would we want to incentivize that when we can fill the rooms at $200 a night versus $70 a night? Well, state rates just went up. So it helps, but, there are some that quite bluntly, and I'm not trying to point to anything, and you guys might go off the deep end on this, but if you want to get some of those state deals and you have to do state rates, do you subsidize the rooms to the tune of $20 a piece? Use the funds for that so that the motel people say, okay, instead of, $100, I'll get $120. Yeah, I'll do that. Or is that, crossing the line? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. But we as hotel owners, I think all of you two that are up there too, would, know, there's certain conferences where if it's going to be an $80 a night room, why bother? I can rent it for more than that without spending money to get it. So lots of pieces, but, you know, there are ways to crank it up a little bit, is my point. I mean, I think there, you know, obviously we want room nights. But in the past, I think a lot of the motel owners have said, if there's things out there that just flat good for the community, it brings in a lot of people and they spend money at restaurants and so forth, yeah, we'll help on occasion. But that shouldn't be, you know, 60% of your funding. I mean, the majority of it should go to room nights. If there's an occasional event here and there that's just good for the community, I don't think you'd find a motel owner out there that wouldn't step up and say, yeah, we'll help occasionally, but just don't make it 80% of my funds.
Yeah, so if we have a surplus, I mean, none of this would happen if we didn't have people. I mean, people are the reason why we have hotels, why we have restaurants, and why we have the places we're hosting these events. So if we ramp up the volume of people inherently, aren't we going to get people that trickle down and we see more volume, more people come to Mitchell as a whole? So if we have a surplus in the budget, I understand the main goal is heads and beds, but you're also going to get people staying that didn't intend to stay when they first came.
Or they buy things, they have sales
Or they
tax.
buy things.
You know, there's other things that come into the city when you bring people that are favorable.
So I guess we could sit and talk in circles all afternoon, but I haven't been a part of this for long enough to know what I'd recommend, but I would recommend having some sort of ability for the Sports and Events Authority to spend more money. I'd be a proponent of that, and I don't even know what to ask for in order to get that done, but
More money's
that's
coming
right.
in, so you better do something with it.
Yeah. One example would be the pre-Sturgis party. When that started, it was 10,000? Yeah. We gave 10,000 to get that started years ago. Now,
I think the final year
the
was
funding has moved.
15,000.
Yeah, well, yeah, it kind of went up. But that was a good example. Is it bringing people in overnight? I mean, when you talk to the motel owners on the bid board, we're pretty full. It's the opening weekend of Sturgis, we're pretty full anyway. But it's a great event for the city, and it brings a lot of people in. So that's exactly what you're talking about. And in the past, we've been directed to stay away from those things and try to put people in beds more than.
Do you think some of that, Tim, is though because you were kind of limited on the amount of funds you have? Or if you
That
have
could
more
be,
funds,
that could be, that
there
could be.
more uses. I mean, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Because there's more money coming.
Yeah, do we have any money that's left over from years past? Are we
So that
sitting
would be
any
on
money?
that report that I pointed out, the $100,000 that was rolled from the general fund into the bid for fund. Yeah, 103,000, that is left over from the
So
old bid.
I would say, okay, so I remember when the whole pool deal went through. So let's just say something along that scenario happens again, where we say, hey, we want to build another pool or another event thing in a year. Well, then we know that it's coming down the line, and since we're collecting more money and we want to put a larger commitment to that, knowing it's going to be a 10-year debt service, I mean, we don't need to have $250,000 in the coffer just in case somebody wants to come build a new basketball arena. Yeah, so I would say, we're collecting it, let's spend it.
I was going to make a comment too that, Aaron, you haven't been with us 2 years yet, have you?
It'll be 3 years.
3 years? Oh, my Lord, okay.
3 years here in August.
So anyway, we know it takes a while to build up and ask for events and find events and so forth. And when we hired Aaron at the city, it was a brand-new position. But we felt there was a need that we wanted to make for sure that we not only got overnights, but the dailies and so forth, and utilize, even though there's not one community other probably than Sioux Falls that says our facilities are perfect, that's all we need. I don't think there's very many towns that could say that, and we're one of them. But yet, we do have very nice facilities on some, we can host the cross-country meets, the golf, the soccer, the hockey, so forth down the line. And we need to utilize our facilities more. And that's why we hired Aaron to go out and start utilizing. He brought in the Native American basketball tournament, where before, nobody was going out and doing those asks. And I know that was part of your comment of, we need somebody out there actually making the ask. and going to the high school activity association, which we haven't been there, and probably prior to Aaron going, I don't know, Tim, 7, 8 years, and we haven't been out there. But we need to be in front of them to say, we do have these facilities that we can utilize. And so we're starting that, and my point was, it takes a while. I know Aaron's been here a little over 2, maybe 3 years now, but it takes a while to get that built up. And he's got a portfolio now that he's following back through with in order to get that. But the city made that commitment for a reason, because we didn't have anybody out there on the pavement. Tim didn't have time. You know, I was on there for a while. You can't go out, you can't run the pier every other month or whatever. So we needed somebody out there to start identifying not only the events and the sporting events, but also the fact of where do we get in line? What's 5 and 10 years from now? Put us at the end so then we can get in the rotation. So I think it's starting to hit, and you can see that up there. And, you know, again, I don't know what the dollar amount is. We've kind of tossed out the fact of, you know, maybe there's the extra 50 or whatever. That's probably, in my mind, a good number to take it from 100 to 150 and challenge Tim and the crew and Aaron and Jill and whoever, saying that, well, let's see what we can do. And if we want to identify new events, I think you would weight them a whole lot higher than existing events. So I don't know, just to get the conversation started, maybe 150 is a good starting point.
I know I'm a broken record, but I'm going to go back to facilities again on 2 examples. Talking about with the State Activities Association, Mitchell was scheduled to have a state golf tournament here. This last year, Wild Oak shut down 9 holes. That took that away. You have to have 2 courses available, 18 holes in the same town, because you have to have the boys at one event and the girls at the other event, because there are so many parents that have kids playing in both. That's the way the state will schedule. They will not put on the same weekend the boys be in Mitchell and the girls be in Aberdeen, because they got so many complaints from relatives and parents. That got wiped off our books. Now, on the other side of things, I just happened to randomly be talking with Jimmy Nicholas during the rodeo. And with the new facility out there, he's got some big plans for the rodeo group out at Mitchell Tech. And he's talking 2 or 3 events that he wants to bring in and schedule. And I know they've talked about bringing in a high school now that they've got that kind of facility rodeo. But again, I'm going back to facilities. If we got them, people want to come to Mitchell. We've got the rooms.
Yeah.
People want to come here, but there's.
And as the evolution goes along, maybe the MTC rodeo committee, that we say, hey, I mean, here's $15,000.
Oh, absolutely.
$5,000 each one of them.
Yeah,
Because these are all brand
and
new
we
events,
would do,
and
I
this
told
is
them that. I
outside
said,
of
don't
thing.
forget them to come to the sports and events. I mean, that's what we want.
And unfortunately, unless somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to buy the other half of Wild Oak, or I don't know what the status of the sale is, or if it even is, but if they say, I need 200,000 or $1 million, like Dakota Riptide did,
Yep.
then perfect.
Yep.
We just don't have that right now.
A lot of pieces.
So I think I heard Jeff say, is that a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. To increase to an additional 50,000, do you want any caveats on it for?
I don't know. I think we can give him some direction, and Tim obviously can relay kind of what our thought process is. I hate to tie it down, but I certainly think with new events, with the extra 50, that we would be a little more lenient and try to get him in at least the first year and then see where it goes from there. But I don't know if you want to try to do any stipulations or at least relay, because we still have control over what they're spending, and we'll get a list. And if we're not agreeing, I guess maybe we can step in at that point. But I'd hate to tie it down.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, unless if we see them going down a path we don't want them to go down, but at this point, we just say, get people to our town. I mean, you know, and if they're doing that, then great, we're not going to criticize.
And I guess just a little feedback. So if we add an additional 50,000, to 2024,
50,000
you know, to 2024, 50,000 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 to 2024, 50 you know, youth, and I know the discussion is sports and events. You know, these conferences, they're 3, 4, 5 years out. You know, this isn't a $50,000 ask that we're going to get a conference here in the next 5 months.
No,
Many of
setting
them.
the precedent is kind of,
Correct, I understand that, I just, to many of these or annual conventions, conferences, seminars, trade shows, they already have their location determined, you know, until, you know, just the Knights of Columbus, they're bid out all the way through 2029. So I know we're wanting to set the precedent, I'm just saying, we put an additional 50,000 in there.
But Aaron, I also heard Jerry say that Jill's had conferences that she hasn't brought to SEA for whatever reason,
Yeah.
that she could be bringing to
It'd
SEA.
be not your fault, it'd be your fault. I mean, I'm not trying to point fingers here, I'm just trying to figure out, like you
The
said,
Knights-
let's get more people.
So what was the
Question
point?
though, Aaron, when you make a long-term commitment, sorry, when you make a long-term commitment, do you set those funds aside as an allocated?
Yeah,
Just
so we
like the
have-
Special Olympics
Which,
we've done.
yeah, so if you said you're going to give something for a 2026 conference at $20,000, you
Yep.
set it aside and say it's going to hit in '26.
Yep.
I think you guys would still be happy with that, even though it doesn't happen for 2 years. It's going to happen, as long as you sold it. But I get your point, you know, it's not all going to hit in the year you give it.
Right,
It
but
may
we would
flow in the
earmark
next-
those
yeah, it
funds for
may
the future.
Flow into the next few years, but if you allocate it, that it's there, you don't have to worry about when it comes up in 2 years that you're going to have to reallocate it.
right,
So I
I
think
would
you're doing
say,
exactly what you should.
go buy Knights of Columbus. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, if it's 300 heads, go overpay for it, knowing that it's hard to change, you know? Go spend 25,000 bucks, whatever it is. I don't know the number, but that's the concept that we're kind of getting at, is go get these bigger events. Even if the ROI isn't
Yeah.
perfect.
You want to
you're
get,
bringing
you
people.
want to get aggressive, Austin, but I hate to tell them, you give them 25 once, they're going to be coming back for 25 every year. So be careful, but.
I don't
but
know the
your point.
numbers.
I knew your
Yes.
point. I know exactly where you're going with that, is get more aggressive at going after some of these things. But, you know, once you commit, you may end up locking yourself down, because most people, it's like giving somebody a raise, you can't back down once you give it to them. You know, it's a little tough.
You swimming guys, do they bid out your swimming, or is it just your turn?
Yeah, it's a turn thing. The only one
Yeah.
that we bid out is if, like in Rapid City, like they can't host it, right? Because they don't have that warm-up, cool-down pool.
Right.
So in '27, when they're supposed to host it, it'll go for a bid to the 4 towns that can do it.
Okay.
So at that point, we would probably be coming
back.
to the Sports Authority and saying,
Well,
how do we get this here?
And that's kind of what I'm getting at, whether it's you or hockey or whatever, if we say, here's $25,000 that you can spend, how many more tournaments can you bring in? You probably can't bring in,
Bring them in, no.
well, that's my
We're-
point.
It's not a rotation. So, yeah, it would be great, because I know we would be coming and asking for it
Yeah,
every year.
well, and we'd love it, but
Right.
it is what it is, yeah.
So we had a motion by Jeff for an additional $50,000 in 2024. Is there a second? Okay. It's going to die for a lack of a second then? Oh, okay. We got a second from Jason.
Yeah, to approve, say aye.
All right,
If you don't approve, say nay. Okay, motion passed for $50,000.
and Jeff, I would say, that's fine, but if something would present itself and we didn't have the 50,000, we'd be coming to this group saying, hey, we got an opportunity to have this come to town, we need an extra, and you'd probably say yes, you know, so either way, that's fine, appreciate it.
Okay, next item, discussion and recommendation of the 2025 budget for approval by city council.
So just for informational purposes, the city is just going to be starting our budget process. Part of that, what our ordinance says, that this board has to submit a budget that we include as part of that approval process. So the budget that we would be talking about would mirror what you have listed in this second page. expenditures. So right now, all we have is the Sports and Events Authority. So we have two different categories. Go to the next page. So right now, we have two different categories of expenditures. We just called it board projects because when Michelle and I set up the account, not knowing what we might use it for, but we wanted to be able to differentiate anything that the bid board authorizes separately from the Sports and Events Authority group. So what we need from this board is a recommendation of what you want to see in the 2025 budget. If you want to start with 100,000 again for Sports Authority, that's fine. If you want to put whatever you guys want to do, I just need to have that to include in the budget process.
But I would just throw out, recommend doing the 100,000 again. Again, if we have more events, a special event, we can always come back and ask you for more. Now, if you're going to approve the swimming thing when we're done today, then that would be an additional. But I would say for sports and events, Dave, 100,000 adequate? I mean,
Yeah, my question is, you just upped it to 150.
For 24, so you want to go back to 100 for 25?
well,
And I agree with you.
No, the intention was that.
If we have a big ask, we can come to this committee and ask.
yeah. And I'll be real honest with you, I don't know where we're going to spend that extra 50 in the next 5 months.
I think, well, whatever it's worth. I mean, you're probably right for 24.
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
rather see you keep 24 to 100,000 and put 25 at one.
Or that, well, that,
But then so the thought would also be is that you don't use it, and just like the funds that we had before, it's gonna roll over, and so
So,
next time we meet, because it's been
Stephanie-
6 months, is it'll be January where we're doing 25. So you set the precedent now and say, we decided last year it's gonna be 150. We wanna move forward with that, and it's an easy, it's a subliminal thought, so we're not.
So here's the complicated part of city government. So sorry about this, but we only approve budgets annually. So every year, it's like you're starting fresh. Now that but with that being said, now that the bid for board has set $150,000 for this year, if any of that $150,000 doesn't get spent this year, we can do that as part of our supplemental appropriations that we do in April. So let's say they only spend $105,000, we could take the other 45 and roll it into 25. It's just a process we have to go through, but it doesn't automatically happen, unfortunately.
So, I mean, basically what it comes down to is the money's still going to be in that fund, but you're only authorizing a certain
Yep.
amount to be used next year.
And even if we're going to do a supplemental appropriation where we're going to increase the budget next year with what you didn't spend this year, it's still going to come back to you guys because the recommendation first has to come from the bid board. So you're going to hear it either way, I guess. If you want to do it up front or if you want to add it later, either way, it'll come back to this board.
And I can add also that this is very consistent with other funds we have at the city.
Yeah.
It's just another layer we have to go through. I can't even remember when we've taken money out of one to
Well,
supply
this one
another.
we can't because the bid
Right.
for, but the bid for fund we set up as a separate fund, so the cash is always going to stay in here. It's just your spending authority is what our budget is.
Right, so in other words, we'll never take it away, but we have to go through another approval process to make it official on the city level.
That's a much better way to explain it. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think it matters much, but you're 100% right in saying that by authorizing the extra 50, which I think is great, guys, super happy with that, but realistically, you're not going to book something now and still make it happen in 24. It's going to be in 25. So really, however you want to deal with it.
That is true, but keep in mind also the earmarks. So if they do get something in 24 to say that in 2029, we want to bring the KCs here, then we do have that available to them, that they could, so it basically, again, it's not spending it, but it's giving them the opportunity to authorize to lock something in.
So it's up to you guys. Does someone have a motion for what you would like your budget to say for 2025? For at least Sports Authority. And maybe, I know Aaron kind of went by the Dakota Riptide ask, but you'll have to discuss that as well. That would take action by council, or excuse me, the bid board. And if you want to do something next year, that should be included in this as well. But again, if you decide to do something next year, we can go through that extra process if we have to too. So it's not like it's the only chance you have, but I want to make sure what's submitted for the bid board reflects and represents what you want it to say.
So this is the ask for the 25 budget. I would think that 150,000 that we decided that's kind of my interpretation. Is that what we want to move forward with and give them the leniency, knowing everything that Tim has said and everything that everybody has said? I'll make a motion for 150,000 for 25.
But that's for SEA Austin?
Right, isn't that what we just went up? Yep,
Yep.
that'd be the same thing we just voted on for 24 to be in 25. Yep.
Is there a second?
Okay, so we have a motion by Austin for 150,000 designated for 2 SEA for year 2025. We got a second by Connie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion passed.
And then I think you need to go back up to number 5.
Is that a closed discussion, or is that?
No, this is an open discussion. It's a
Open
budget,
discussion.
yeah. Well, we don't have an executive session listed on the agenda, so
Remind me again, Stephanie, what's the obligation to the city?
the remaining balance, man.
168 or whatever.
168,
Yeah, 8, whatever.
yep. And what the city did to try to kind of help, since part of this was caused when the pool was down, is like I said, we waived any rental fees, obviously, and then instead just applied what rent they did have that year towards the debt service. We also, the city council authorized, we had some costs associated with that debt service payment, basically the financing costs. So the city council moved our money into that debt service account, so we would use our money first to give the swim club more time to pay that back. So there is still a remaining balance of $168,000. Obviously, there's no formal written agreement between the city and the swim club, so if it's not paid, it's going to be an obligation of the city.
We gave them, was it, we extended it 5 years,
I
wasn't
thought
it?
it was 5, but you said 4.
4?
Oh, I think we have 4 years left. We have 4 years.
Oh, okay.
that
Yeah,
makes
we've
sense.
been talking about this for a year,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, that makes sense.
I thought we had 4 years left.
You're probably right, because we started talking about this a long time ago.
Yes.
So,
When the pool shut down is when we first
yeah.
started talking and stuff, so 22.
So there's 4 remaining years on the debt service payment. And I'm very thankful we were able to get the lost revenue from that loss of the swim meet back as well. Although the damage was done to your club already by then, but still we were able to get some of that lost revenue back.
I'm not going to participate because, to me, that is up to you, Motel. You've already given $1 million for the pool. So I think the input should be from you more than me, but I do have a question. I know they're asking for 3 years, but would you have to, at this time, approve 3 years of payment, or could you just approve 1 year, 50,000, and take it up year by year, from what I'm hearing?
I think this board can do whatever you choose to do.
Okay, that's my question.
Just one of the things that I would say, just being on the board, we appreciate everything you guys have done. By knowing what we have coming for the next 3 years, we can plan what we have to do next. And because we don't want to come back every year and have fingers crossed, or we get to year 3 and we go, oh, you got this big bill that's due. We want to take care of, or make sure the city's taken care of for the help that they've given us and what our commitment is. So that's why we came to ask for a commitment for the 3 years, so we know what the next step is for the swim club.
Yeah.
And I'd just remind the board, I mean, you're in 2024 right now, so at a minimum, you can talk about 2024. And you're also talking about your 2025 budget today as well. So, I mean, you're 2 out of the 4 years just with the years that you have in front of you right now.
2 out of 3 years.
I'll give, my daughter was a swimmer, and just as the following as a parent, and also being a business owner in Mitchell and seeing what the impact is. Those are some of my busiest weeks when those kids are in town. And I don't know how the hotels are on that too, so the following on that, it's huge. So I'm not giving my, what's that?
So is the ask.
Oh, I know, so I'm going on both sides, so I'm just.
Takes a long time at $2
Yeah.
to make 50,000.
When you look at, and again, we appreciate the $1 million, but that's kind of part of our thought process was that we just extended what was done for the last X number of years, was kind of where our thought process was. And again, like I said, we're trying to fill our, cover what we've got, so.
I'm a bit confused on what the actual ask is here. So could we just reiterate that? Are we looking to push out debt obligation, or are we looking to do concessions on debt?
They're looking for $50,000 a year over the next 3 years that they would use
That
for
we
their
would just
debt
give back to the
service.
city.
For the debt service payment.
And how, because that would be your rent, essentially.
We pay rent on top of it.
We still pay rent on top of what we own.
So you would get $50,000 to pay back to the city? And how would that happen? Through bringing people in the?
Well, the city took out debt for part of the pool project. $1 million was paid off by the bid. The other $1 million was coming from the aquatics club. So it would go towards that debt service payment that still remains. So I don't think you would ever give the money to the swim club. It would just be transitioned
It
over
would
to
be
that.
$50,000. The ask is $50,000 a year, so total $150 to go towards the $168
Yes.
of their debt service.
Right.
And so we already did $1 million, correct? So then at the end of the day, the ask is kind of $1 million,
But million would have been
$150.
to the, I mean, that wasn't to the club at all.
Yeah, that was
to-
the city.
to
That was
build
just
the
the
city.
City's portion.
That was to build the pool.
But then this would just be to the, essentially upping the budget of the city for the pool.
To have the pool facility.
Because
Yeah.
they committed to raise $1 million. And so this is just the obligation of them.
Yep.
Making up the
Because it
remaining balance.
Never would have came here to begin with if they didn't obligate to rent. So it's
Right.
not really any debt paid, it's just,
Stephanie, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
The pool project in total, what was the cost for that? I mean, did the city, do you know? I mean, is it roughly?
6.8? Does that sound right?
Oh, I thought it was more, I thought it was like.
Let me look.
9%.
So, I'm not even worried about getting it that close. I mean, if it's over 6 million, the point I wanted to make is, the bid did 1 million. The idea was the club would raise 1 million, and really the other 4 or 5 million came from the city.
I think it was 6.8 for some reason.
Yeah,
That's
so
6.8.
the city's already stepped in pretty big,
right.
so,
I'm kind of reading this
Yeah.
as more like an alleviation of an obligation for something that was built for the city regardless.
well, see, I started this thinking, well, why doesn't the city just forgive some debt? But if they've already put in $4.5 million,
Like,
More than that.
I get where they're coming from, I guess. It's not like they haven't participated.
And because, just to go back in history, when the pool project was proposed and then later referred, the people of Mitchell who voted on that project were shown a funding package. The funding package included $1 million from the bid, $1 million from MAC. We used some remaining community project bonds that we didn't use for phase 2 of the Corn Palace, and instead we used it for the indoor pool. We got a sponsorship for Pepsi, or City Hall, that's what it was, you're right. And then, you're right, that was a long time ago. And then we got a $200,000 sponsorship from Pepsi to cover the cost of the slide. So that's what people were shown, that's the commitments that were made publicly, and that's what everybody voted on. So that's why we've been trying to hold that, hold those promises up the way they were spoken, because people voted on that, and that's what they thought what was happening. They voted on what they thought the city was paying, what everybody else was.
it's very similar to what just passed with the lake then, right? Friends of Fire Steel and then their.
But no, our project that we had with the lake didn't show anybody else contributing money. It was all city funds. The pool specifically showed that $2 million coming from an outside source. As part of the vote.
Yep.
So you're really voting on the motel bid to help supplement their commitment for, the pool being down or whatever. I mean, there's lots of issues there, but, I mean, there's no question that they took a hit when they lost a bunch of members.
We lost members when COVID hit. I think we had several businesses that, pledged to us a commitment for so many years. When COVID hit, our pledge is done, and now we understood it, like, we can't go to this business is struggling, they can't ask them for the money you said you're gonna have, you normally would have had, right?
I get the COVID thing, but if you.
I'm not making excuses, but that,
No, no,
we
no.
had some happen, and it was.
But when COVID hit, it killed motels worse than
Oh,
anything too.
yeah.
So,
Right. Well,
we're kind of
those
all
are
in the
some of
same
the places
boat.
that
there,
also
but-
probably maybe donated to the Riptide, or the MAC at that time to help get the pool built, and you couldn't hold them, we couldn't hold them accountable to a pledge you made when your business is struggling,
You're-
like, that doesn't make any sense.
What you're doing is you're trying to make good on your commitment to the city, $1 million,
yes.
one
Yep.
way or the other.
One way or the other.
You're just asking for some help to
Yeah,
get there.
and the help, and in turn.
And I,
for-
and I respect that, to be honest.
And in turn for the help, typically we only have one swim meet, and that's why we're saying we're gonna do 2 meets. We're gonna get the state meets, so we're trying to come back to you as well, not just saying, hey, we have 1 meet in December, we'd appreciate this. We're trying to up what we do too. And I will say this, like, we wanna host these meets, and we wanna host, when we host the 13 and over A meet, truly, the Mitchell Swim Club, the only thing we make on that meet is concessions. Because the state takes we get splash fees, we get different things that way. They take the splash fees. And so, we continue to want to have these meets, because one, we like it in Mitchell, we like what it does for the community, we like helping the people that help us, because again, like I said, I know I go to swim meets, and if I can walk out of, was it Rapid City last weekend for state swim? If I can walk out with spending less than $1,500, it's been a good weekend. And I think that the majority of the people out there, families out there, are saying the same things, because it's hotels, it's restaurants, it's everywhere else you go through.
So, yeah, we were over 8.2 million total project.
That makes it hard for me to say, city, why don't you give some more, because you gave a lot already. I mean, my motel hat would say, well, why do we have to do it too? But, I mean, the city stepped up in a major way, and it is good.
And the pool brings a lot. I mean, like, if you go into that pool now, it's not just built for the swim club.
No, it's
I don't
good.
want that. I
It's
don't want
good.
it.
It's
You
good
go
for
in there
the
now and you look at the water aerobics that are going on in that pool, it's amazing. Like, I would have never thought we had that many people interested in doing water aerobics.
Yeah.
But it is a great resource for the community of Mitchell. Does it help us? Tremendously, right? We wouldn't have a team without it.
Yep.
So, we made a big commitment, different things happened, and this is where we're at, so.
Is there a motion, or is this going to die for a lack of a motion, we'll say?
Well, I'll just say that, judging by my lack of knowledge on the actual budget of what the Sports and Events Authority gives to each individual group, besides for the paper that I'm provided, and that my ask on getting the Knights of Columbus here at that hypothetical $25,000 number that I kind of threw out at the table, I know that this is for a $50,000 ask each year. I'm probably just going to stay to the side, because I'm not as privy to our budget, and I'm not comfortable enough knowing to commit that much for a group that I don't know that much about currently.
And I would say that, and I understand the bid funds both the Sports and Events Authority, but this is bigger than the Sports and Events Authority. This is the bid that goes with it, right? So it's on top of that. So it'd be budgeted 150 Sports Events Authority, and then what we're asking for. And again, like I said, if it's if we don't ask for 50, we can't get 50. We'll take any help.
So let me ask you this then, is there a way, this is more for Stephanie, so because we upped the budget to $150,000 for this year, say that there's a remainder at the end of this year as we get down to the last hour, can the Sports and Events Authority designate, $5,000, $10,000, 20, is that how that works?
I think it would come to you guys, because this is more of a board project than an event we're bringing to town. The swim club does get money for when they host their tournaments, they come in and they ask for their rent.
Yeah, we have
for the
come asked for
facility. Yeah.
like reimbursement for rent and lifeguards and.
Right.
Yeah, if you-
It really just taking one thing from this part of the city to a different part of the city, really, so it's just, it'd be like, oh, we don't charge you rent because you bring people in, we come to the Sports Authority to get money to cover the rent, to help us there. So, like most places do, like soccer or baseball or whatever it is.
I think they have a compelling case, but I'll just go back to what I said. I think, for me not knowing the budget too well and committing to $50,000 a year,
Can I give the board
I
some
can't do
options,
that.
maybe? So.
Yeah, keep in mind, Austin, sorry, Stephanie, I know where you're going, but I mean, keep in mind, you all committed 150,000 of the roughly 300,000 for the Sports Authority. So there's another pool of money that's coming in along with it that you've got no allocations for.
Right.
Now, I'm not advocating and telling you need to spend it on this, but you have a little latitude, because even if you continue at 150 and we bring in 300 a year, you're going to have a balance that's building to the tune of about 150,000 a year, that someday somebody may come in and say, we need a whatever.
So
And
We need an
Stephanie,
indoor pickleball court, you know?
So
like that.
hypothetically, because Stephanie showed us there was $100,000 left over from last year,
Yeah.
if we're able just to be on track for the $100,000 that we did this year, but we're bringing in 300, does that 100 from last year add to a 200 surplus from this year? So there's a hypothetical 300?
Surplus does carry forward.
Yeah.
The allocations
Surplus,
do
right.
not.
Right, and so we could either just bank and kitty for the rate of $200,000 each year until we have $1 million waiting for somebody to come ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or another option would be, just like they did for the indoor pool, the bid board could say, hey, we want to support project XYZ, and we will commit so much a year towards the debt service payment for project XYZ, and then that portion of the bid fund would be obligated to that debt service payment. That's what you did with the indoor ice arena. Well, of course it's indoor. And then the indoor pool, sorry. Is they obligated the bid funds coming in for that debt service requirement.
Austin, just to kind of clarify that, it's not that you don't want to build that fund up, because you may need it at some point, and you may want it. I mean, I think as motel owners, you guys would probably agree with me that, what we're really looking for is off-season nights. And, just my little head, which is just my opinion, not everybody's in the motel industry, but I keep thinking about if this community had an indoor field house like they do in Sioux Falls, where they can bring in people in the wintertime to do soccer or tennis or pickleball or whatever, just a big open turfed area. Think of the people you could bring in the wintertime that would have little tournaments in there. I mean, I was in one in Phoenix that was huge. They had 3 large buildings, and in one building, they had 10 indoor basketball courts, they had 10 indoor turf fields, and they had indoor baseball. I mean, it was crazy. Now, we can't do that in Mitchell, South Dakota, I know that, but, it's okay to kind of build some funds for in case somebody does come with that and says, this community really needs an indoor facility for the wintertime for the kids, and for bringing in winter sports and winter tournaments. I think that's the thing the motel owners would love. I said, if you can get me room nights in January, February, and March, when there's not a lot going on, boy, I'd love to see that kind of proposal. But it's not in front of us right now, so you can't, it's not there, so you can't plan on it, but.
And even in that,
Season goes January, February, and March.
That's
Yeah.
why I
I
like.
wasn't sure where you were going with that.
That's what- That's part of why I do like the swims, because it's in the right time of year. I mean,
and Jerry, just to go further on your comment, in that situation, even if the bid board, if there was money accumulated in the fund, if the bid board chose to, they could use the accumulated funds as well as the commitment of future funds towards debt service. I'm just saying you have a lot of flexibility, and it was written in the way that this board's the one that's considering, just like in the past when we did for a specific project. It's this board that determines what that other board project is. So that's why I want you guys to commit to what you want in that budget.
I think as a bid board, you're going to find yourself at some point, folks, getting yourself into a situation where I'm going to use X percentage of the funds for immediate promotions, and I'm going to use X percentage of the funds for long-term, more capital projects. I think I could see that someday where you say, I don't want to blow it all on capital, so we have nothing to do promotionally. But maybe you don't want to do it all on promotions. You want to be able to build some of these things for the long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
You
would
got to
agree.
decide how you're going to spend $300,000 a year, which is a great problem. I love it.
Yeah.
You got to, you're going to have to give yourself some guidelines on where do we put the money? Do we put it toward immediate promotional stuff, or do we do some of these capital things that are good for the community and good for us long term?
I totally agree, because wintertime is when you want them. And right now, we've got the Corn Palace, and the Corn Palace is full.
Right. And so, just like
Tim.
any opportunity can come up at any day, tomorrow we could have somebody says, hey, we want to build this huge new field house. What about your money? And so we say, well, shoot, we just did this for 3 years. Maybe we have money in the coffer, and we say, maybe there's just something we want to do right now.
Hey, Tim, can they do a dart tournament in the indoor field house?
Mm-hmm. Sure can. Sure can. That's why I was asking originally if it had to be a 3-year commitment. If something else comes up now, you're committed for the 3 years. Just a question. And they've got 4 years to pay this off?
3 years.
3 years?
First year we already
Yeah.
went through, so that was my fault.
Like they said, you don't have to give them 150. You can give them whatever you want. You can give them nothing. You can give them 100 grand. You can give them 75 grand. I mean,
Could always up it later.
it's up to you guys. But I understand their desire to have a 3-year commitment, so you know where you stand going forward and what you need to do privately.
Because then we make our plan as to how we're going to come up with the rest.
I think I'll recommend that we give $30,000. I don't know about the 3-year commitment, just in case something else comes up, but the reason I think that is that it's almost 50% or 2. I guess. That would be I don't know about the commitment on the year, so.
So just $30,000 for this year, 1 year.
Well, I'm open for suggestions on what anybody else is asking or thinking, I guess.
And again, like I said, your guys' decision, but, if we were able to do that for 3 years, that's just a little over half of what we owe, and then we go back to the drawing board as to how we fundraise the additional amount. So if it's 30, we'd appreciate that.
If you would do the 30 for 3 years,
For 3 years.
would give them an opportunity to continue their fundraising, see what they can always come back and ask you for a supplement 2 years from now or 3 years from now if they're
I
short.
agree, and we want to keep them solvent because it's exactly what you guys, as hotels, want the business. And if they can't fund this, it puts them in a financial situation, I guess, as well.
Agree.
So is that a second?
3 years or 1 year?
I'll recommend $30,000 over the next 3 years for a $90,000 total.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Jason for $30,000 each year for the next 3 years, which is the $90,000. And then a second by Tim. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion passed.
Thank you guys very much. We appreciate it.
So obviously, with that motion, I will, if you go back to that previous, if you go back to that previous budget sheet, in the board projects line, there'll be $30,000 for 2025 then, is what I'll show, and that's that payment. And then during the year, if you guys get that big proposal that comes in, this can always be amended during the year as well. So I just, with all the discussion when this bid board, just as a point of background, just with all the discussion around this when the bid board was created, I wanted to make sure that this is a discussion with the board and that everybody feels comfortable with what's getting submitted in that budget, knowing that the recommendation is coming from this group and not from the city. It's not because the city's trying to do something different, so.
Okay, I guess the last agenda item would be discussion and determine our next meeting date in 2024.
Could I ask a question? Since we have someone who has sit on another bid board, could I just ask you what situations Watertown is facing? Is it facilities? Is it funding? What do you hear there?
Well, our bid board does not fund Brooks and Mortar.
Okay,
We are marketing only,
okay,
so you can come to our board to bring an event to town and for a certain dollar amount with an application, but we would never have given them
yeah.
payments to make on a loan.
Mhm.
We do a lot of advertising with the state of South Dakota because they'll match our dollars and do a lot of advertising that way. We probably spend close to $300,000 a year just that way. And that gets us Facebook, that gets us TV, print, all kinds of advertising that gets Watertown's name out. But I think the most we've ever funded any one entity is $10,000. And then they have to give us a survey when the event is done and tell us about the event before they get their check.
And is that promoting budget, is that in addition to what the CVB is spending, just marketing the community, or?
Our bid board is an independent board of all hoteliers, one city person, but the CVB is our chair people or whatever
Yep.
of it. We don't give additional funds to the CVB. This is all funds
Yeah, no, that's what I was-
marketing that we do just through the bid.
That's what I was asking, because some cities use their bid money for their CVB tourism marketing, which we don't.
Brookings does.
Yeah,
But no,
so it's in addition.
correct.
Connie, will you touch on the big difference between this bid and Watertown bid for public input? Like, it's a closed meeting in Watertown, right?
No,
Well, not,
it can be open. Everybody comes and they give their
That's what
spiel
I-
for the stuff.
So I will say, because this is run through city budgets, it has to be an open meeting.
Okay.
If they just gave all the funding to like the CVB to distribute the funds,
Yep.
then it could be a closed
I think the
meeting.
confusion for me lied on, it's obviously open, but we limited 3 minutes there, but then there was all kinds of open commentary throughout.
So the public comment time is really for anyone to discuss items that aren't on the agenda. All the discussion items that were taking place were part of the agenda.
Okay.
So it'd be the budget for next year, the request from the swim club. Those are all agenda items, so that they can have discussion on that as much
Okay,
as they
from
want.
outside, okay. Good to know.
Would you like to come do some public input?
We can take
I mean, it's okay. We haven't heard from you, and so I'm guessing you're just not like, I just want to join. I mean, I'd love to hear from you.
No? I'm
Nope.
Okay.
Because it's a public, so the weird thing about the state law is since they're giving the recommendation on the expenditure of funds, we're giving that authority to this board. We have to follow open meeting requirements just like any other city board. So the public comment is required by state law.
Perfect.
So we have to do that on every public agenda. So.
Connie,
I'm kind of just new to the town, just 3 years. I don't know, is there any limitation for the board member? But it's recommendation, can we have each board member from each hotel? So let's say if you have a 10 hotel, can we have a 10 member? I'm just curious. Instead of just limitations, if we have more like, let's see, Hampton, Comfort Inn, each hotel have each member on the team. If they're present, that's good. If they're not available, that's great. But then we have more views and, option for the recommendation. That's my
Yeah.
personal opinion.
That would have to go, council.
How do you do it, Connie? Who's the voting members on your board in Watertown?
Our board is only the hoteliers, and then we have, it's Julie Ranum from the Redland Arts Center, so we have one person that, she's on the CVB board, and she's a entity or whatever, so,
So does every hotel get a vote on the bid board?
yeah, as long as they are active and on the board. There are some that have chosen not to be on the board, so we've got, and I'm on representing 2 hotels. There's 3, 4, 5, there's 7 of us maybe that are on the board. Not all hotels are active or attend. And some have, and now they don't, and
So if you represent 2 hotels, do you, does
get
your
2 votes? No, I only get 1 vote.
Okay.
So right now, we have 5 members that are hoteliers. We have 2 that are business representatives, and then 2 elected officials. So, and that's set by ordinance. So if they wanted to change that, it would just require the city council to change the ordinance. We do have 2 members that are up. It looks like their terms expire in December of this year. That's Tim Smith as a business representative, and then Austin as a hotel representative. Now, they're eligible to be reappointed for another 3 years. It's just implemented as staggered terms to begin with. I guess if this board wants to recommend that the council, that's something that would have to go through council, so.
So you're talking sports and events?
No, I'm talking the Business Improvement Board.
Oh, this board number 4?
Bid number 4 board
Uh-huh.
has Andy and Sam, well, the Thunderbird Lodge, Quality Inn, Corn Palace Inn, Kelly Inn, and My Place Hotel are the 5 hotels. Then we have 2 business representatives, which is Tim Smith and Jason Bradley, and then the
Oh, that's
mayor-
right, we staggered those, didn't we?
Yes, they're
Oh,
staggered
that's
terms.
right.
So there's 2 members that their 1-year term is up at the end of this year. So even though it says a business rep, I guess, council could appoint someone else to that. It would just require the ordinance.
And
to
ours
change.
just doesn't
Yeah.
have to, ours doesn't.
Because you don't have to
The
follow the
money,
state
the
process.
money goes through the city, all of that, but we don't have to,
Because it's not a city board. It's probably run through the CVB or something like that.
yeah, it's the bid board, I don't know. All of the money gets collected at the city, and we don't have to.
We brought that up when this first started, with Mayor Everson. That was a hard no-go. Now, things have changed, so.
I
I'm not
will
saying
say
you can't change
that
it,
when we did the comparison of bids, there are other cities that do their bid board as a city board, just like we are. There are other cities that do this. There's other cities that just take the entire bid fund and it's just given to the CVB to market. There's other cities that do like a combination. Huron was another one where like the city writes the check of the bid funds to the CVB, and then they write the checks for the individual grants that they're awarding. Well, then it's not coming through the city, so you don't have to do all the public process. So there's a lot of different ways people have done it. This is just the way it was created, so.
And it can be changed.
It can be changed, yeah. You just have to go through and change the ordinance. So.
And I'd just add, that as soon as you start increasing the membership, that also is going to increase the number of people that you have to have present for a quorum to be able to hold the meeting too. So unless the people that you're adding are going to be actively involved, you're going to end up being able to not hold meetings at all.
And I will say, as far as the open versus closed meetings, this board could schedule, like, let's say you had some kind of a development proposal, and they wanted to come in and give you their financial information in private. You could do that as a closed executive session. We just need to know that and publish it on the agenda that way. SEA does have executive sessions to review the applications and the financials of those who are applying for funding. So you still have the ability to talk about it in private, you just have to note it on the agenda.
It's definitely all over the board though, Connie, and, where you're coming from is the one extreme with, well, I wouldn't even call it an extreme because I kind of like it, but where everything is marketed for marketing and promotions and nothing capital. Quite bluntly, the first 3 bids that we had were 100% brick and mortar and no marketing. So we've came at it a little different than some of the other communities. That's why I said, for us, at least this new board, you're probably going to have some parameters on how much promotion, how much capital, and get comfortable with it. Because as soon as people figure out there's a source of funds available, I'll guarantee you're going to start seeing more and more asks. And more capital asks too, probably. So, I mean, there's no right or wrong, I don't think. I think you have the flexibility to do whatever's allowed by law, but, you know, it's depending on how we as a community want to structure it and make it work.
So I guess we don't have to make a decision on the next meeting date, but is there a month? I mean, do we want to have and I can communicate, email to you guys, text, phone
I think our
calls.
intent was semi-annual.
I mean, it would make sense.
But we're new, so
Yeah.
we may want to have a few more meetings prior.
It would make sense at either the end of the year or right after the end of the year that the group get together so you could look at how much bid funds actually came in 2024 with a higher amount, look at what SEA spent their funds on, and maybe give you a little bit just of starting that history and that historical knowledge of what we're doing with the funds.
So January 24th was was what our last meeting date was.
So what if
End
we
of
would
January
just- since you
2025?
Mentioned there, Stephanie, we can have our meeting in January, but would it make sense 3 months from now to have a meeting just to kick things off? This is our very first meeting. We had a 1-hour meeting in 2 hours. So we had a lot. So would it make sense maybe just to regroup, get some input from the community and so forth, and meet sometime in October, and then again, as you're proposing in January? I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but this is very new to all of us. Stay away from hunting season. So maybe throw out a few dates.
So if I send out an email with 3 or 4 dates like I did for this meeting, and then we just, once we have a quorum met, that'll be the meeting date?
Sure.
Sounds like a plan.
I really hope you guys come to the next meeting too. It's helpful to have that historical, reference.
Yeah, I'll get on there and get the notifications. I mean,
If you need help, you can.
my winters are hit and miss.
Well, Aaron and I talked, that was some confusion. We're going to relay everything out to every hotel,
I mean,
regardless if you're on the board or not.
Yeah, I like that model where, you guys have all the motels on the board, but
Then you can't get more.
I understand sometimes that creates a problem, but I'd sure like to at least see all motel owners attend the meeting.
Yeah.
That would be very helpful.
Because you've been really good at allowing us to just have informal involvement. And I think that's enough in most cases, unless all of a sudden the board doesn't start listening, then maybe we have to do something different. But, I think we're all learning, Jeff. I think you're right. We're kind of learning and seeing how we go. But man, I'd like to see everybody here. I know Bob, when he was there, he wanted owners. He didn't want managers. And quite bluntly, there are a lot of motels that aren't locally owned. So, you sometimes got to allow a manager. I wouldn't have any problem in the world if I can't make it to say, hey, Emily, she's my general manager, you go to the meeting. Just provide input, be a part of the process. That way you can't complain all the time when it doesn't go your way.
Well, plus though, there's also just different perspectives too. Like when we see that on SEA all the time where events go to some hotels and not others, and then they report back what they saw, so you never know.
Anything else? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Justin, could you just show us that